Yeah, probably. I mean, it really came down to needing a break at first. That then became a longer break, and I was really enjoying the break. And but no, I mean, Treasure Adventure World took a toll on me for sure. 6 years was a long time. I didn't think it was that long, so people were in my life were becoming impatient. My wife, other people, and they were very supportive. But at the same time, it's like you can't do this forever.
Welcome to the Phat Games podcast. My name is Blair Pyle, and we've got my other co-host.
My name is Gary, the other half of Phat Games.
And on this episode, we have a very special guest, because all of our guests are very special. The amazing, the wonderful, the handsome Steve Orlando.
Hey, thanks. Nice to be here. Appreciate that.
Glad to have you.
I mean, it's nice to be, special amongst a bunch of other special people. So.
Even I feel special sometimes.
We're all special. So, Steve, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for doing this.
Sure.
Why don't we start with you telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So, yeah, I mean, I guess you can still call me a game developer, although, as you'll probably get into, it's not something that I'm currently really into. But, I am the game developer of Treasure Adventure World, a Treasure Adventure game. It's not really how I define myself now, but it's for a long time it was. So we'll say I'm a game developer for now. Do you want me to start with how I got into it, or?
Yeah, how did you get into making games? Like what brought you towards this wonderful passion?
It's definitely not it was not a direct path for me at all. I mean, I've always loved games as a kid. I'm almost approaching 40 years old. So when I was in college, game design wasn't really a thing you went into, and I didn't know much about game development or game design other than it was very difficult, and it was done by programming lines of code into a computer, and it seemed like you had to be there 16 to 18 hours a day, and it really wasn't appealing to me until I guess around 2008 2009, when I started seeing a lot of some smaller indie teams coming up with cool concepts, and also was starting to see that game development tools had come so far that you could develop a game without knowing the nitty gritty of code and
without building the engine.
Exactly. So it got something that you could get started with more easily, and little game development tools and level editor stuff was always something I was interested in as a kid. So I kind of just applied that idea to some little projects that grew into a bigger project that just kept growing and growing, and went from a hobby essentially into a mini career for a while, and then to whatever I'm at now. So.
So would you say that did you actually want to do it when you were a kid? Because I can relate to that, and we were both around the same age, and there wasn't a lot of education behind that, no game development courses in college or whatever. But was it always a passion of yours? Because you and I both grew up with the 8 and 16-bit era games, and that awesome, even a 32-bit era. That was our childhood. Is that what sort of motivated you, or?
Yeah, it's more, like I said, I don't think when I was younger I thought I could make a game. I didn't think it even was possible. So no, I don't think I thought of that. But I always wanted to be part of the gaming industry somehow. I had a passion for it, and I always wanted. I also have a creative streak, and so I wanted to put that towards something that I was passionate for, which is gaming. So even though I didn't make games when I was a kid, I did fan websites. And I had a fan club for Donkey Kong Country when I was a kid.
Oh, really?
An official Nintendo Donkey Kong fan club recognized, stuff like that. And I had the first Smash Brothers, English speaking Smash Brothers site. I imported the game months before it released, and then was ripped apart the manual and figured out all the mechanics of the game. Before it even came out in the States, I had a website up for English players ready to go on day one. And so stuff like that. I got really into that stuff, and then I left that stuff behind when I was in college because it all seems like that's what I did as a kid. And I went into a whole different direction in college, nothing about games or anything. And then after, when I was done with college and I was just, working a boring job, and I started to get inspired by games like Cave Story and these other smaller little indie things that were made by one person or two people. And then again, just picking up some of these game tools and just realizing how easy and fun it was to make simple games, and I just kept growing. And I think we'll probably touch on this later, but I was realizing that I'm years away now from releasing Treasure Adventure World, and I thought a lot about like how I did it and like what I'm going to do in the future. And I realized that like my naivete, like my like not knowing essentially what it took to make a game is what allowed me to do it, because I didn't realize what was ahead of me. You know what I mean? I was having fun and I was enjoying it. So I just kept going and things were working. But years and years later, I realized like I built this like quagmire almost where I was like in a difficult position and I didn't realize, you know what I mean? And it's like, it was too late to go back or whatever. It's a hard thing. So it started off, right? It started off as like pure, just like fun for sure. You know, just, yeah.
Well, actually, let's jump right into it then. So Treasure Adventure game was released back in 2011 on Steam.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't know if Treasure Adventure World is considered a direct sequel or just a spiritual sequel, but that was released back in 2018 at this point.
Yeah, I just make a small correction. Treasure Adventure game was never on Steam until recently, but it was at least on GOG in 2011. Okay. So yeah. No big deal. No big deal, but it's fine.
So now I saw it on Steam though. But
it is out now, but that's more recent. So yeah, I recently put up on Steam like a year ago maybe, but yeah.
Oh, really? Originally, recently?
Yeah, but it was like something I should have done years ago, and I was like, oh, I should probably do that. But yeah, no, originally it was GOG, and that does kind of tie into the whole story, but later. But
so let's get into it then. So so Treasure Adventure game. This was you had a few other titles that tied into this, a few other prototypes, if that's the way to classify them.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
That really sort of led to this. And Treasure Adventure game had a lot of positive feedback from everything I saw. People loved it. That was really cute and a lot of fun. So tell us about it.
Yeah, so Treasure Adventure game it was fun for me too. I mean, it was like, it was a lot of work. It was years of work, and there were times I was like, I'm never going to finish this. But yeah, man, that game was a pure passion project. I just put everything that I wanted in a game into that. At least that's what I thought at the time, you know. It's literally how the name came about. It's like Treasure Adventure game, where like these like ideas I had, like, because I was trying to do these higher concepts before that, where like it was doing something a little bit different. I realized, I just want a game where I run around, collect treasure. It's a big adventure. Like those are the things that I was focusing on. So when I was developing the original design documents, I just kind of kept that name as like prototype name. But yeah, it was just meant to be like everything I put in it was something I was enjoying. And when I stopped enjoying it, I stopped working on that. And I moved on to the next part. And and so.
Wait, so you actually, sorry.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead. That's pretty much it.
You did these, you actually did game design documents for Treasure Adventure game?
I mean, they were simple. They were more like storyboards, I guess. It was like I drew in pixel art what I imagined scenes from the game would look like before I actually had the game. So that was like, and then I used those as inspiration. I was like that. So I'm gonna get like, I had this cool scene with like the ghost where you get to the ghost island and you have the little like ghost hunting thing. And I was like, okay, maybe that's like 2/3 of the way in the game is you'll get to the ghost island. So I just kept that image in my mind, like I'm gonna get to that something like eventually. A year from now, I'll get to that level, and that kind of thing. So
I can totally relate to the long game with respect to game design. Our current project is a JRPG, and it won't be done until like maybe like 2026. Who knows? I keep changing the year every time we talk about this podcast.
But see, that's at least a realistic deadline. In my head at the time, I kept thinking this will be 3 months from now. I'll be done. There'll be another 3 months. I'll be done because it didn't realize how long it would all take. But
it's not the code; it's everything else. So. Okay, we had 10 years ago, Treasure Adventure game on GOG, very recently Steam, very much a PC-only release. I've never played it as a result of that. So Treasure Adventure World, released about 3 years ago.
That's right.
Let's talk about that one.
Sure. So that's like, this is the big one. So yeah, so Treasure Adventure game came out. I released it on GOG, and it got some attention there. It did, like you said, some people definitely enjoyed it, and it won a few small awards. So it felt I was riding high on that, like that I had something there, and I definitely wanted to do something more than, because I wasn't making any money on the game. It was freeware, and it was kind of freeware on purpose because I knew that would reach a large audience, and I also wasn't like confident in myself and thinking that people would want to pay for it in a way at the time. So I put it out as free, and it did get a lot of people to play it as a result, including one of the people who co-founded Chucklefish. And at the time, they were riding high because they had just kickstarted Starbound, and they had just released and published another indie developer who for Risk of Rain. So when I got approached by them to do something, it was like kind of like, I mean, someone who like is just doing this as a hobby, who was kind of outside of the industry, was totally blown away and was like, yeah, this is maybe do have something here, and I should definitely take advantage of this opportunity. And what they proposed was taking my little game and basically turning it into something bigger and a more commercially viable product, and something that because we already had the framework for something good there, and we just wanted to like turn it into something cooler. So it actually really isn't a sequel, as more it is almost like a remake. So I went from making a game, put it out, and then just instantly turned around and remade it, build it bigger and better, so
I can relate to that.
yeah. And it seemed to me like at the time I was like, well, this is smart, because I got a backing of this publisher, and I'm making a game that I don't have to redesign from scratch because I already got the solid design here. This is going to be like cake. Like I'll pump this out in a year, no problem. But yeah, I mean, I had no idea what I was getting into, because I had only made that game up to that point, which was a small little pixel art platformer. And, there was a lot, we really wanted to raise the fidelity of the game a lot, not just in the art style, but, everything. So we really wanted to pump it up. So what I thought would be maybe like a one-to-one transition from pixel art to this nicer style ended up being way more complicated. When we first did our first pass and we just basically turned the pixel art into flat art, it looked like crap. Like it looked like utter crap. And we're like, what is wrong? Like we realized we needed like layer upon layer of like added artwork to really like, it was like more like an exponential increase of like what it took to make it look better, So these were all things that I had not planned on. So it quickly ballooned, became a much longer project than I had planned on. So.
Okay, so you had a team for Treasure Adventure World. I believe it was like a mutual friend of you and Blair's, Craig Barnes, as your artist, and Christine Crossley, I believe. Tell us about your experience working with them.
Sure. Yeah. So Christine did the art, and Craig did some music. Yeah. Christine was really the person who I was with almost from the beginning. So actually, so I did all the pixel art for the first game, and going forward, I wanted to have an artist for sure. So that was the first thing I talked about with Chucklefish, was like, I need an artist, and I don't really have any connections. I don't really know who we can do it. So they connected me with her. It was probably the best thing they did for me, honestly, because we worked so well together. Like we meshed immediately. She got what I was going for in the game. She worked hard. And when, even though there were times when like we had to take breaks or she had to take breaks and I had to take breaks from the game development, we'd always come back to it and be like, leave right where we left off. So working with her, I mean, we're still friends and we still do work some stuff together. Like, yeah, that's one of the best like connections I made in the whole thing. Same thing with Craig. And actually, that's like really, I would say, the best takeaway of the whole process. Like it wasn't even that I made a game. It was meeting people like Blair, meeting people like Craig, Christina, like these people that I met doing this, going to conventions, stuff like these are like long, like friendships I have for life. So now, like years later, like that's the most important thing that I actually take away from all those years, for sure. So
geez, man, that like brings like a tear to my eye, because I definitely relate. Because meeting you was definitely a highlight of the last few years working on games. Christine did some beautiful artwork for the game. Like the game looks phenomenal. Great job.
Yep, right. That's her right there.
Oh, that the poster in the background that you got there?
Yeah, she did that. That was what she designed for our convention. Yeah, we brought that all the different conventions we did. So that's
really nice. So will we ever see a Switch release for Treasure Adventure World?
It is certainly possible, but so the problem is basically time and money, right? Like the two things that no one has. The time it would take for me to do it, and honestly, I just don't really have the energy at this point to do it myself. So I have looked into getting it ported, and it just, unfortunately, the cost is a little out of my league right now. And this goes into the fact that the game ultimately didn't perform as well as I'd hoped it would, and kind of is what led to like me deciding to get away from game development for a bit and stuff. So like it didn't, what I mean? Ultimately, we didn't got there yet, but it kind of didn't work out ultimately. And so doing a ports, while it's a really cool idea and it probably would make money, it's hard to justify because the Switch store is also getting swamped. It's like a risk, it's a really risky move to make if you don't, unless I was going to do it myself and take the time to do it, and port it, which would take me probably years at this point, extra work. I don't think it's going to happen, unfortunately. So it is possible though, down the road. It's always possible.
All right. So you mentioned Chucklefish earlier.
Mhm.
They published Treasure Adventure World,
Mhm.
and they have also done a number of other big indie titles, such as Stardew Valley, which I think everyone knows, and very recently Eastward, which I'm actually currently playing through, and
Yeah, it's awesome.
I really enjoy it. Yeah, it's a great game.
Mhm.
What was your experience like
Mhm.
working with them?
Yeah. So, well, we also, there's, I don't know if you follow the news and all that stuff too, but there's also been like news stories that come out about certain things that happen, allegations that have happened. I don't want to talk about that stuff because I didn't experience any of that personally. Personally, for me, Chucklefish was a bit of a disappointment, but they didn't do anything. They basically did right by me ultimately, even though they flopped on the game. I think what happened was the people who were supposed to be kind of involved in marketing the game got let go or moved on shortly before it was time for me to launch, and we ended up working with people who were like just a little bit more green, I guess, in the world of marketing games. It just, we kind of ended up, the timing was bad, I think. There was a shakeup there internally that I found out about later, which I think was part of what was going on behind the scenes. So, but ultimately, so even though they sort of flopped on the marketing of it and the game didn't reach its audience, the deal that we ultimately struck wasn't something that where they screwed me over or anything. In fact, just the opposite. They kind of did right at the end by me. So,
but were you in any way disappointed the fact that it didn't do as well as it could have? Because I actually think Treasure Adventure World is a great game. I've never played through it in full because I don't have a PC, unfortunately. But the marketing is really important. The social media marketing, the articles on whatever gaming website that you may follow, that stuff, well, not necessarily doesn't guarantee anything, does have an impact.
Yeah, for sure. And so, I mean, you're right. And I was trying to do some of that stuff myself. And I think, the onus was partially on me to do that stuff. And I dropped the ball on a lot of that stuff too, because honestly, that's not why I got into this. This was originally a hobby for me because I was enjoying making games. I don't enjoy hawking stuff on social media. I just don't. So every time I had to, and so, that's what you have to do to be successful. And I naively, again, was thinking, well, that's what the publisher's for. So I don't need to worry about that stuff as much. I'll do it. I'll go to conventions and I'll do it, but I'm not going to focus my energies on this because I need to focus my energies on making a game. And so I did rely on them. I counted on them quite a bit to do that part. And yeah, they definitely dropped the ball on that part for sure. Yeah. And, but
because that is the only reason I'd reach out to a publisher for that help, because I think, Gary, and maybe you agree with me or not, I feel like we don't need help on the other areas. We need help on the promotion, because
we need help on all the areas that we don't like.
We don't like and we suck at.
Right. Well, that was ultimately kind of what they were promising the whole time, was you make your game, I mostly had to self-fund it. And then but then when it comes to that, we've got all these resources, and they did use some of the resources. It wasn't like they didn't spend any money on us either. They hired a professional QA team to work on the game for us, which is something I certainly couldn't have afforded. They helped with a lot of aspects, trailer design, just helping with general testing and giving us feedback back and forth. And there's a lot of experienced, talented people over there. It was a great resource. But like I said, I think we just, the timing things, there was a shakeup there. Timing was bad. And, we just got left kind of in the lurch a little bit. I think maybe they didn't have huge confidence in the game. In the years that it took us to make the game, the industry changed a lot. The indie scene became crowded. A lot of talented people left the AAA industry, and we were competing with them all of a sudden. It just changed in the time it took me to make the game. There's so many aspects. I can't, you certainly can't blame any one thing, but yeah, that certainly is a big part.
How long was Treasure Adventure World under development for?
Well, when did it come out? 2018, 2017? What was it? 2018. Yeah, 2018. And I started it in 2012. So 6 years.
Wow, that's probably as long as we're going to be working on Kids of Karendow.
Yeah,
So
yeah, look forward to.
great. Would you recommend Chucklefish to other indies?
I mean, if they're not only if they're going to fund the game for you, sure. If they're willing to put money up front, yeah, definitely. And it's a good, you think it's a good deal, and your attorney looked at it or whatever. Yeah, I mean, they're not. Nothing wrong with that. In fact, they probably since then have gotten like, the people who marketed my game probably learned a lot from it, and we're like, well, we won't do that again, and you know what I mean? Like they're probably fine. I don't know. I don't have experience with any other publishers, so I can't compare them. But they have a lot of successes under their belt. They have more successes than failures. I'm like one of their only failures. So odds are, if you go with them, you're probably going to make a good. You're going to be successful. So
It makes me curious as what they did with Eastward, though, because I've heard a lot of. I mean, I'm really enjoying the game. It's Eastward is kind of a slower. It's an action RPG with a lot of puzzle elements. It is kind of a slower pace in terms of the story. They actually burn a lot of gameplay time in the storytelling, and which is very much a contrast to what Kids of Karendow is, because Kids of Karendow is very fast-paced JRPG. Still, there's a lot of story elements to it, and it is heavy on the story, but it's at a lightning fast pace and keeps things moving fairly quickly. So I don't know. It would be interesting. I don't know what Gary thinks, but when I was researching this podcast, and I thought it might be interesting to reach out to them. So
well, I'll certainly give you my contact info for them. I they're still working there. I'll hook you up. So
Sure, we'll take it.
Are you talking about the developer of Eastward or Chucklefish?
Chucklefish.
I don't know the developer of Eastward, but yeah, I know a couple of people from Chucklefish still, so I could contact them. So yeah, we could do that. I mean, it's worth reaching out to them. It's on the other people have asked me before, and I always pass along that info because they're always, I think that's something they're always looking for. So as any publisher would be. So
all right, cool. Thanks. Okay,
yeah,
so
sure.
There hasn't been anything new since Treasure Adventure World. Now, would you say that the experiences that we had led to a hiatus, or?
Yeah, probably. I mean, it really came down to needing a break at first. That then became a longer break, and I was really enjoying the break. And but no, I mean, Treasure Adventure World took a toll on me for sure. 6 years is a long time. I didn't think it was that long, so people were in my life were becoming impatient. My wife, other people, and they were very supportive. But at the same time, it's like you can't do this forever, right? At some point, we got to like release this, and what I did, and it was clear that it wasn't going to be, making the kind of money that where I could even like consider taking a little time off from work or whatever. I had my suddenly like I kind of had a panic attack because my near future. I'm very bad with like uncertainty in my life, and suddenly like. All the plans I had kind of had in my head were just thrown out the window, and I had to completely figure out what I'm going to do now, like reassess my life, like what do I want. So I definitely had a bit of a panic attack, like kind of mental breakdown a little bit that I had to deal with. And then luckily, because of some of the amazing people that I met, actually Craig mostly, he hooked me up with this like job listing, helped me with my resume, and I actually ended up with a sweet gig in the industry. That I'm really enjoying, and so like that was shortly after the game launched, and because so in between that time I was definitely freaking out. But once the job came around, and it was like, man, okay, maybe this was all kind of leading to this, and I should just focus on, like stepping back from game development and just like I don't enjoy playing games for a bit, enjoy seeing people and doing things that I was kind of avoiding because I was so focused on releasing this thing, and so. Even though I haven't really considered anything super serious, I definitely still tinker with game development and game design. I've probably the most. I actually have worked on something for a significant amount of time, but then sort of like realized I wasn't having much fun with it. So I'm trying to keep it back to a hobby again, where if I'm enjoying it, I'll work on something for a bit, and then if I'm not, I stop. And maybe something will come of that. We can talk later. I do. Just recently, I did come up with a concept for a potential sequel of the Treasure Adventure World that kind of ties in a lot of these experiences I had and makes it more a simpler game, like a much simpler concept, but maybe like a little sequel for the characters of the game that also represents some of the feelings I've been having about things since I've released it. So So that's a potential thing that I could do, and I've got like pages and pages of like ideas written down, and some simple concepts like program and stuff, but I just don't know where they're going to go at this point. So,
thanks for listening to the Phat Games podcast. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you get notifications of future videos. Now stick around and listen to the music from Chattagoya Forest in Kids of Karendow.